right, this is it. The episode involving 60 Minutes, where I did a video about the preview to this, and it was supposed to be released in January, but they finally released it near the end of April. And it's entitled Evidence, and it's about the current Saudi Southern District, New York, 9/11 victims' families' lawsuit against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where we have evidence that was sealed for 20 years by the FBI. And it wasn't until Operation Encore a couple of years ago where this was released to the lead agent, Danny Gonzalez, where you could see video being shot by Omar al-Bayoumi, who helped two al-Qaeda operatives who later would hijack Flight 77 that crashed the Pentagon, filming the Capitol and the airport nearby, as well as other areas in Washington, D.C. Now, why this wasn't shown with the FBI, I don't know. Look, it's a 13-minute video. It's not very long. And here we go.
Evidence has emerged that could change our understanding of the 9/11 terrorist attacks more than 2 decades ago. It was turned over to the FBI in the weeks after 9/11, but our reporting has uncovered it was never shared with the Bureau's own field agents or top intelligence officials. Why, after all these years, is this crucial information just surfacing? The evidence is coming to light as part of a long-running lawsuit against the Saudi government by the families of the nearly 3,000 people killed in the attacks, and it includes a chilling video of a Saudi national filming the U.S. Capitol.
The story will continue in a moment.
A voice on the video says in Arabic, "I am transmitting these scenes to you from the heart of the American capital, Washington." This video, recorded in the summer of 1999, was unsealed in federal court last year as part of the 9/11 family's lawsuit accusing Saudi Arabia of providing crucial support to the hijackers. Exhibit A in their case, the man who made the video, Omar al-Bayoumi, who asked a bystander to film him in front of the Capitol. The FBI says Bayoumi was living in the United States on a student visa and being paid by a Saudi aviation company in California, despite not showing up for classes or work. Investigators say, in fact, Bayoumi was an operative of the Saudi intelligence service and had close ties to two of the hijackers.
Well, at the time, he didn't know they were going to be hijackers that we know of, all right? So we might as well just say that he had connections to two al-Qaeda operatives. Now, whether he knew whether they were from al-Qaeda, I happen to think that he knew, only because through the Operation Encore files, we have a confidential source inside the King Fahd Mosque that said that Fahad al-Tameri had long discussions with Omar al-Bayoumi over the phone. And there was one phone call that was heard by this source and Fahad al-Tameri about to expect two brothers, Islamic brothers, not paternal. And they were coming from Malaysia. Now, this call came from Malaysia. So I can only assume that this came from Taufik bin Attash Khalid, who was the chaperone of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wafaa Hazmi to Bangkok. And then he stood behind in Bangkok, and al-Mihdhar al-Hazmi then traveled to Los Angeles International Airport, where they were picked up by a Tunisian cab driver, Khalid Ben-Amin, who was told to go there to pick up these two brothers, Islamic brothers. Who told him that? Fahad al-Tameri. Now, when the FBI interviewed Khalid Ben-Amin, what happened? Well, Robert Mueller cut the case off and deported Ben-Amin. Funny, because Ben-Amin was shown 30 photographs after 9/11 and said to pick out the two men that he picked up at the airport. He picked out Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wafaa Hazmi right away and then put the photos back in and didn't discuss about it anymore. Omar al-Bayoumi had numerous phone calls in December and in January of 2000, and those calls trailed off afterwards. So a lot of coincidences where there's smoke, there's fire, but nothing really definitive. But, if you're going to talk about providing logistical and financial support to two al-Qaeda operatives, what are you doing it for, right? He didn't help anybody at the King Fahd Mosque. He only helped these two people, and it says so in this episode. And he lied to the FBI about meeting them. Now, I'm not going to get into this whole spiel, because I don't want this to be off track, but he had known about these two men before they even arrived inside the United States.
Capital Hill. Time is 6 p.m.
The video was filmed over several days. Bayoumi recorded entrances and exits of the Capitol, security posts, a model of the building, and nearby landmarks.
Monument.
Bayoumi points out the Washington.
He's doing this video for somebody. As you can see, he's describing them, right? You will know in close detail. Who is he talking to, right? Why is he showing security inside the Capitol? That's always funny to me. Why would there be, if he had known about the 9/11 plan? Now, remember, this is mid-1999. According to the 9/11 Commission report, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed had set up a meeting with bin Laden about attacking the United States. And then later on, there was a second meeting in the fall of 99 where bin Laden says, all right, we can't do 10 planes, we'll do 4 planes. But he shot this video in the spring or summer of 99. So that would mean that was before the initial meeting with bin Laden. I've always said that there were additional planes that were going to be hijacked that day. That's not me, speculating. That's fact. Even Bob Graham, the co-chair of the Joint House Inquiry, admits that we knew about the potential hijackings of other planes. Zacharias Moussaoui, who wasn't tortured, who was arrested by the FBI, said that he was initially proposed to be in the initial wave and then was selected to be involved with the second wave of attacks. Now, this would fit well with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's plan to use 10 planes, multiple targets. He was going to use Abdul Hakim Murad, one of the plotters of the Bajinka plot, where the 9/11 planes operation came from, and that he was going to manually steer a plane into CIA Langley, and then Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was going to have operatives inside the United States hijack 10 planes, with him flying, with him on the 10th plane, killing all the men, leaving the women and children alive, and then landing the plane and explaining to the media in some big gala about why he did what he did and this and that. Really ridiculous. Very egotistical, this guy. But that's how Al-Qaeda was. Bin Laden, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi Youssef. Ramzi Youssef was an Al-Qaeda. And, these were men who were, who would tell you about the plan, give hints about a plan, an operation, and then take full credit for it. The Al-Qaeda that's building now isn't that way. And that's what makes him so more dangerous. But that's neither here nor there. So that's really interesting that he's filming about security inside the Capitol. But originally, the Capitol was indeed a target that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed wanted to attack. And in fact, there's an FBI interview of one of the passengers of Flight 93, where they said the Capitol was next, and one of them said the World Trade Center was next again. So, did anybody on Flight 93, the hijackers, know what they were going to attack or whatever? I don't know. But they did announce that they were going to die on the plane. It was the only time where we heard a hijacker say, we're going to kill everybody in the plane. That's coming from the passengers' phone calls.
Monument and says, I will get over there and report to you in detail what is there. He also notes the airport is not far away.
What I see Bayoumi doing is going out and making a detailed video record of the Capitol from all its sides and then conducting that 360-degree panoramic view.
Richard Lambert is a retired FBI supervisor who led the initial 9/11 investigation in San Diego, where Bayoumi and the two hijackers lived prior to the attack.
This is something that Ali Muhammad did, but I don't know if he had a camera, but according to him, he took pictures of the areas around the U.S. embassies in Tanzania. And actually, show where the security was, show where trucks went to. He did counter surveillance. This is similar to that. That's Interesting.
He's now a consultant on the case filed by the 9/11 families.
If you've ever flown into Washington, D.C., one of the first things you see on the horizon is the Washington Monument.
Right.
So if you know where your other targets are, it helps guide you to your intended target.
Federal investigators believe the hijackers on Flight 93, which crashed near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, planned to hit the U.S. Capitol as their likely target.
Right.
In the video, Bayoumi references a, quote, plan.
You said...
You're right. Right, exactly right. Now, this was alleged, right? Because we really don't know because Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was tortured. But before he was tortured, before he was renditioned to the CIA, he gave an interview to Yosri Fuda from Al Jazeera and told them about the whole plans. The Capitol was in the plans. The plan was to attack the World Trade Center 1 and 2, the Pentagon and the Capitol. And if you couldn't get to the Capitol, the White House. It was, they all had different names for it. I forgot the nicknames. I think it was the Office of Finance with the World Trade Center, the Office of War for the Pentagon, and the Office of Government, or something like that for the Capitol. But he, I don't quote me on that. But he did have like terms for attacking these things. And right now, who again, if he's a tourist, what does this mean? You said that in the plan. The plan to do what? It's not descriptive, right? Now, he doesn't need to have those words on the video because he's probably thinking, this video might be seen by other people. And I don't want to relay the plan of what they're doing, but now you're thinking like, is that what he really meant? So you're really not, you don't know what this is for, but it all lines up to attacking Washington, D.C. with an airplane.
Said that in the plan. What plan?
Right.
What do you think he's talking about?
I think he's talking to the al-Qaeda planners who tasked him to take the pre-operational surveillance video of the intended target.
Right.
So this video is taken in late June and early July of 1999. What does that timing tell you?
Well, that means it was taken within 90 days of the time when senior al-Qaeda planners reached the decision that the Capitol would be a target of the 9/11 attacks.
That's when Osama bin Laden decided to approve the so-called planes operation proposed by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11. During a raid on...
Right, but that would, but that would mean that it happened during the second meeting because they met twice. They had met twice. And the second time they met, I believe, was in the fall or winter, where the final decision was made to use 4 planes instead of 10. That's according to the story. And this lines up well with it, by the way.
Bayoumi's UK apartment about 10 days after the attacks, British police discovered the Capitol video, along with about 80 other tapes and a trove of documents now being used as evidence in the family's lawsuit. This internal FBI report dated October 11, 2001, shows that copies of all recovered exhibits were sent to FBI New York via Federal Express, but the Capitol video never made it to the San Diego field office.
I had not seen that video.
Retired FBI Special Agent Danny Gonzalez, one of the lead 9/11 investigators in San Diego, says he never knew about the video during the 15 years he worked on the case. He is also a consultant for the 9/11 family's lawsuit.
Not only did I not know, all of the case agents in San Diego didn't know, and the case agents in New York didn't know. And we're talking about the joint terrorism task forces that not only have FBI, but we have other state, local, and federal agencies. They did not know either.
How's that possible?
I don't have that answer, and that angers me. When I saw that video, I knew exactly what it was.
Did you need this information to do your job?
Absolutely.
He believes he could have used the Capitol video to build a case against Bayoumi.
And he should have. Listen, the first meeting with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and bin Laden was allegedly early 99. late 98, early 99. I'm talking about like January. The second meeting was much later. So this would mean that bin Laden was thinking about the plan, didn't approve of it yet, but thought it was a good idea. So that means they sent the Saudis, well, their contact would be Muassad al-Jarrah. Whoever contacted Muassad al-Jarrah, sent two emissaries, Mutiab al-Saderi, Adel al-Sadan, and their names are mentioned in the Operation Encore file. That's why I mentioned them. And they acted as the eyes and ears of Muassad al-Jarrah, who has connections with al-Qaeda. FBI found out about that, and bin Laden, to monitor what Omar al-Bayoumi, Fahad al-Tamari, Osama Basnan, Anwar al-Awlaki, who were providing financial and logistical support to Khalid al-Badr and Wapel Hasbi, who were reporting to, well, not reporting, but Omar al-Bayoumi was in charge of, making sure that they're taken care of in the United States. So you can see like this pyramid of where it starts from. And like I said, bin Laden didn't approve of this yet, but he must have thought this was a good idea. But here's the thing. We don't know that yet, right? I could sit here and say that bin Laden contacted Muassad al-Jarrah. I don't have evidence for this, like I'm speculating. So somebody made the contact to Muassad al-Jarrah. Obviously, someone told him. And then because he has contacts all over the United States through the Islamic embassy in Washington, D.C., it just so happens that he's already there and that the Capitol and the White House are there and the Ronald Reagan Airport and Dulles Airport, they're all, close by. Sends two emissaries from Saudi Arabia, Mutiab al-Saderi and al-Sadan, and said that, I need you to monitor or, coordinate this operation with Omar al-Bayoumi, Osama Basnan, Fahad al-Tamari, who's an imam at the King Fahd Mosque, where Khalid al-Badr and Wapel went to, and Anwar al-Awlaki. Everybody has to be at somewhat on the same page. Now, when it comes to details about the plan, a need-to-know basis, all of this, by the way, was put together by the FBI through interviews of certain people, and they all lied. Fahad al-Tamari was deceptive. Omar al-Bayoumi lied, but the associates didn't. And the associates are the ones who built this narrative because they experienced these people and told them what they were doing, just like these confidential sources that were in King Fahd Mosque. Who made the decision to hold the video from the FBI? None other, it had to be the director himself, Robert Mueller. Was it his idea? No. That's coming from bigger pressure than him, all the way up to the commander-in-chief himself or the vice president. Either or. It's not coming from the Secretary of State or the National Security Advisor or the Joint Chiefs, because it's the State Department that is protecting their interests with Saudi Arabia. And Danny here has every right to be completely, really pissed off at the fact that this video, which is really fucking huge, could have been the evidence they needed to have Omar al-Bayoumi deported back to the United States to face charges of providing financial and material support to two known al-Qaeda operatives. The hell with the 9/11 plot. He's going to deny that, even if he knew it. But at least they can get him with that, I think.
I would have taken it to the United States Attorney's Office, who was requesting from us, the FBI, anything that we had they wanted to look at.
Meaning what? That they would have filed charges, that they would have indicted? What would your hope in that be?
It was a terror investigation, but it was also a mass murder.
In your view, this video was so significant that it should have gone all the way to the top, to the White House.
I think it should have because it's the Capitol building.
Gina Bennett was a senior counterterrorism analyst at the CIA for 20 years.
In the aftermath of 9/11, we were briefing the president and the National Security Council. We didn't expect that this was a one and done. We expected al-Qaeda to continue to try. So resources were going entirely to trying to undermine any additional plotting.
The Saudi government says this is a tourist video, that there's nothing to see here. You don't buy that?
No, I don't. Who does a tourist video that is reporting back on this is where that building is and here's where the security guards are?
Now retired, she was the first person in the U.S. government to warn of the dangers of a global jihadist movement led by Osama bin Laden.
Well, wait a minute. This doesn't really count because he didn't work in the government. So, yeah, technically she would be. And I'm familiar with Gina Bennett. But there was another guy who worked for the fire department who knew after the raid of El Sayed Nosair's home and after the bombing of the World Trade Center in 93 and warned the FBI because he had in his house, with his wife, and he had a diagram of bin Laden, Ramzi Youssef, the Consoya business front in the Philippines owned by Mohammed Jamal Khalifa that was sending money to the Pachinko plotters, who was the brother-in-law of Osama bin Laden, and his name was Ronnie Buka. And I'll never forget it because he was, when I read The Terror Timeline by Paul Thompson, which is the Bible of 9/11 books, and he's the best 9/11 researcher on the face of the earth, right there with, the likes of Kevin Fenton, John Judge, DJ Thermal Detonator, and others. Very few, by the way. But yeah, Kyle Hens, these guys. So yeah, I mean, Ronnie Buka was the first. And we're talking about 1994, 95. But yeah, Gina Bennett was the first in the State Department. Now, I don't think they took us seriously at the time. Maybe the Clinton administration did, but I mean, he had Richard Clark, the National Security Counterterrorism Center. These, at least they heard about this guy, and that's why they created, the Bin Laden Issue Station. The Able Danger program was to, track international terrorism. But what good do these fucking things do?
Bennett has no involvement with the 9/11 family's lawsuit and says she too was unaware of the video's existence until we asked her to evaluate it. As we discovered, she was not the only one at the CIA in the dark.
George Tenet, the CIA director at the time, says he wasn't aware of the video. Same for Michael Morrell, the president's daily intelligence briefer at the time. Does it surprise you that they didn't know about this?
It does surprise me, again, because we're talking about the U.S. Capitol, and in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, Bayoumi was a suspect.
A lot of people will see this.
Wait a minute, now let me stop it here. I don't mean to keep stopping it, but this is important. Through the Canestraro document, another bombshell that nobody reported except for the Gray Zone. They did, and Florida Bulldog, of course, they're the best, but nobody really covered this, and it was a fucking revelation, one of the best revelations in 9/11. That and Encore. Sorry, but anyway, the CIA had an open file on Omar al-Bayoumi back in the mid-90s. Wow. Why? Why the fuck would they have a file on Omar al-Bayoumi? Is it an open file or is it a closed file? But they had a file on him. I don't know. Do I think George Tenet, the director, knew about Omar al-Bayoumi? It's a good question. But the CIA knew about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi inside the United States. How would they not know about Omar al-Bayoumi? Remember, they were running an operation with Saudi intelligence inside the United States. They knew they were coming here. Now, of course, there's no case officers on the ground, so it's illegal. Now, can I say that definitively? No. But Saudi intelligence could have done this. We're working alongside you. We'll act as the people on the ground. since you can't. Now, did they tell the CIA about Omar al-Bayoumi? Did the Saudis tell the CIA everything? Did the NSA tell the CIA everything? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm getting at here? All the intelligence services, foreign and domestic, all face to face, and they all naively believed or were hesitant to believe that information would be shared. Now, I'm always reminded of a statement that Anthony Schaefer from Able Danger told me once, that he naively believed we were all working on the same thing to stop international terrorism inside the United States from attacking the United States from within. And that wasn't the case. It could be that George Tenet was naively believing that Saudi intelligence would tell him everything. That very well could be the case, ladies and gentlemen. They got screwed. Because if the Saudis and say the Israelis were inside the United States, and they were monitoring these people inside the United States, and they would, their superiors, and their superiors, which are in the governments, and their foreign policy officials are basically saying, wouldn't be a bad idea if this planes operation was successful, because what would come from it? Well, we would attack Afghanistan. This would mean that we could attack Iraq. This would mean that we can basically destroy our common enemy, which is the countries the United States will go to war against. Countries that are outlined in foreign policy plans that go back 20 years. And not just the United States, but Israel's, the Oded Yunan plan. Remember that big conspiracy? Well, Iraq was number one. The fragmentation of Iraq, the fragmentation of Arab states around Israel so that they can lessen the threat. The United States, a multitude of reasons, right? So, do I think George Tenet knew about al-Bayoumi? He probably didn't, because it would make sense. The Saudis shield him from them, but I find that hard to believe because the CIA has a file on him. That could mean anything, but they knew of him. But what did they know, right? Would they know about the plane's operation? No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Video for the first time and think, how is it remotely possible that it's just coming to light now? Could it really have been sitting in a evidence locker room all of these years? It seems like a pretty epic failure.
Well, I think it's a matter of, did they lose the evidence, or had they filed it away in a way that it would not have seemed relevant? That I can see.
As it turns out, there was more evidence, specifically this airplane sketch and math formula that was also seized from Bayoumi's UK apartment and turned over to the FBI in 2001. It was stashed away for more than a decade until Danny Gonzalez in 2012.
Let me just pause right here. You can see height the plane from the earth in mile. Listen, planers, no hijackers, explain that away. Nevertheless, wow, if he can disassociate himself from the 9/11 attacks, this is not the fucking way to do it. But also, what a dumb move by al-Bayoumi. And by the way, that looks like a fucking plane, right? And it is. By the way, it's a drawing of a plane. Height. H equals height, right? And this was the mathematician. The FBI had an agent who was an aeronautical engineer and said that, yes, this is what that would mean in terms of diameter, as Gonzalez is going to explain. But fucking holy shit.
UK apartment and turned over to the FBI in 2001. It was stashed away for more than a decade until Danny Gonzalez in 2012 got a phone call out of the blue from an FBI evidence technician in Washington.
What did they tell you?
They told me that they had these boxes with the name of Omar al-Bayoumi written on it, and they were sitting in a warehouse in Washington, D.C., and they were going to relocate these boxes or destroy these boxes, And they wanted to know if I wanted them, and I said absolutely.
But as one of the lead investigators into these
Unbelievable.
attacks, did you have any idea that this sketch had even existed before you got that phone call?
No, I didn't.
He had aviation and aerospace experts analyze the equation for the FBI. Their conclusion: a pilot could use it to calculate the rate of descent to hit a target on the horizon. In 2004, the 9/11 Commission produced
Right.
what
Now,
was
listen, think about it. The rate of descent is coming from the monument. You see the monument? What's right over there? The Capitol. Rate of descent, the Capitol. What's nearby the Capitol? The Pentagon.
at the time considered the definitive account of the attacks. Its executive director, Philip Zelikow, told us he was also unaware of it during his investigation. So were former senior U.S. intelligence officials we spoke to. As for Bayoumi, who was never charged with the crime and moved back to Saudi Arabia after 9/11, he was asked about the sketch as part of the lawsuit in a 2020.
Wait a minute. It's well documented that Omar al-Bayoumi left the United States and went back to the United Kingdom. Was it just before 9/11 or just after 9/11? Shit. It was just before 9/11, just after 9/11. And by the way, would I fucking love to see this? I've been looking for the deposition of Omar al-Bayoumi. This is him currently. I did. Well, by the way, no, it's not current. It's 2021. So 4 years ago. Listen to what he had to say.
One deposition. He confirmed the sketch was his, but said he remembered little else about it, including his handwritten notes that say height of the plane from the earth in mile and distance from the plane to horizon. When pressed about it, he came up with a far-fetched explanation.
Perhaps this was an equation that we studied before in high school, and I was trying to remember whether I'm going to be able to figure out and solve it or not.
And what is an equation for? I didn't know. Just matter. Just
He's a fucking liar.
There's no proof that Bayoumi shared the equation with any of the hijackers. What we do know is that he met the first two to arrive in the U.S. nearly 2 years before 9/11. Bayoumi claims he met them in a chance encounter at a restaurant here on Venice Boulevard in Los Angeles. He then helped them move to San Diego, finding them a place to live in his own apartment complex, co-signing the lease, and helping them open a bank account. He even threw a party, which he also videotaped, capturing one of the hijackers on camera. He then introduced them to others who helped them obtain government ID.
The person videoing is his associate, Qassem bin Dan. It's also noted that when Omar al-Bayoumi got Qassem bin Dan, he was going to drive him to the DMV about his license. Said that, I got to stop by the King Fahd Mosque first. He went to the mosque first. And according to Qassem bin Dan, he was there for an hour meeting with an individual with a beard and everything. And he met with Fahad al-Tameri. From there, Omar al-Bayoumi went to a halal restaurant. The first restaurant was a halal. And then they walked over to the next restaurant, and it was the Mediterranean Cafe. The other one was the Mediterranean something, I forgot. But it was the second one was the Mediterranean. It's not there anymore. And another great 9/11 researcher, Leonardo Salvaggio, actually went there. And we talked about that in our series. Please watch that one. That's a great one. And, you know, that's, you know, according to al-Bayoumi, he was there with Qassem bin Dan, and in walked in al-Madar and al-Hazmi. Qassem bin Dan was interviewed by the FBI and said that, no, al-Bayoumi and Qassem bin Dan went to the restaurant and they were already there sitting down. And then they were speaking Arabic. Qassem bin Dan knows very little. And Omar al-Bayoumi was speaking with them in Arabic. And then later on, you know, gave him his phone number. But al-Madar and al-Hazmi were actually staying at a condo owned, you know, a room condo owned by Fahad al-Tameri. And the 9/11 Commission said, we don't know where they are those first 2 weeks. Well, that's because Fahad al-Tameri had them in a, you know, in his own residence, right? They moved to San Diego at the behest of Omar al-Bayoumi, pays for their 2 months rent. gets them their driver's licenses, gets some cell phones, right? And Anwar al-Awlaki helps them open a bank account for them. So all of this was helping. And then, according to sources inside the King Fahd Mosque, the FBI asked him, has Omar al-Bayoumi ever helped anyone like this before? No. In fact, he's even opposite. He's cheap with his money. And he spent thousands on these guys. That's a fucking red flag.
And enroll in English classes and flight schools. Bayoumi and the Saudi government say his actions were innocent, the result of a remarkable series of coincidences.
Bullshit.
Isn't it all possible in your mind that Bayoumi wasn't actually involved and all of this is pure coincidence, as the Saudis claim?
No, I don't believe that for a second.
Why not?
Right.
Could have been a guy who just wanted to help his
No.
brothers adjust to a life in a new country.
Who else did he help besides those two hijackers? I don't know of any, and I couldn't find any.
Omar al-Bayoumi is living as a free man in Saudi Arabia. What do you think about that?
Awful. Awful. He should be here under the court system.
Yes.
The 9/11 Commission concluded that Bayoumi was, quote, an unlikely candidate for clandestine involvement with Islamist extremists. Does that still hold?
I think the 9/11 Commission is just not fully informed. It's not their fault, but it's not fully informed.
So all
Correct.
the evidence you've seen,
That's correct.
the
because
materials...
remember, Zelikow was the man in charge. He's the executive director. And information was not, all the information wasn't shared with the commissioner. So it's not their fault. And they knew about it. That's why I said we were set up to fail. 9/11 Truth was basically, they were set up to fail because it was, no, it was because it's not a false report. It's an incomplete one. You could say, the report is bullshit. Well, the report is bullshit only because it's incomplete. It told some of the story. It didn't tell the whole story. They couldn't. This is where the 9/11 Truth Movement fails. Well, it's all false, it's all right, because they don't believe in hijackers and they don't believe in hijacked planes. A lot of these people. Not everybody, but a majority of them do. So, of course, they're not going to believe anything in the report. These people don't read. Anyway, Omar al-Bayoumi was suspected of being a spy by who? Khalid Hamadar. What? You think they're going to tell Omar al-Bayoumi what they're doing? But if anything, they didn't need to, because Omar al-Bayoumi was being told about something else from somebody else. He had to just make sure these two were accommodated inside the United States. And when they fucking didn't go to their English classes, they couldn't become pilots. They were replaced by Hani Hanjo, because they were selected as to be the pilots of Flight 77, one of them. But then, they got fucking lazy.
Report, the Capitol video, the sketch. Your conclusion is what?
My conclusion is that Bayoumi was an al-Qaeda facilitator. He had sympathies with al-Qaeda, ideologically, and that he provided substantial support to these two individuals, these two hijackers, without which they may very well have been caught.
Bennett says Bayoumi was indispensable to the success of the hijackers' plot because they spoke no English, had little formal education, and no prior exposure to life in the West.
I don't see al-Qaeda, as meticulous as it was with its planning, just throwing two operatives that are so instrumental to the success of this operation into a massive city without a soft landing, without a network there to catch them.
Right.
She says the new evidence
Great
raises
point.
a lot of important questions.
Like what?
Who else? Were there other networks? Are any of those individuals still active here or elsewhere in the world? Is there any other evidence that's sitting in a box somewhere or, locked up? And work from that new information to learn what you got wrong, to learn how to not get it wrong again.
The government of Saudi Arabia has filed a motion in federal court to dismiss the 9/11 family's lawsuit, saying neither the kingdom nor Omar al-Bayoumi had anything to do with the attacks. The judge overseeing the case is expected to rule on the motion soon.
And so far they haven't. I'm in touch with one of the family members who are involved with the case directly, and no decision was made so far. Brett Eagleson from 9/11 Justice is, still active, and so is um, Elizabeth Miller from 9/11 Peaceful Tomorrows. They're all still active. These groups are still active, and they're trying to raise awareness. And through the efforts of the Florida Bulldog, indispensable. And then you have others like Spy Talk and sometimes the Gray Zone. But then there are active researchers like Nelson Martins, DJ Thermo Detonator, Sean Russell, Darren Harvey, Jonathan Bellasort, and Leonardo Salvaggio, and myself. We're still trying. John Gold is still doing his job, his thing too. But it's I wish there was a lot more eyes and ears on this, but there isn't, unfortunately. So there you have it. That's the whole episode right there. And listen, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in and taking an interest still. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.